Okay, we are ready to go. I would like to thank those of you already on stage. Thank you so much for setting the example. What we mean is that we're ready for the rest of you to join us on stage. And thank you so much for your patience. We are ready to get started. So please make your way up. This is an intimate gathering. We expect there will be some spillover, hence the boxes on the outside. But we don't want you to aspire to sit on the outside. We want you to come on stage, please.
We have more on the side.
All right, we see a lot of people standing still. Please feel free to join us on stage. We have some seats. We have about 10 seats left. Maybe a few more than 10. If we do need more seating outside, there are boxes to my right. So feel free to grab a few of those if there is no more seating on stage. Okay, a few more going, 6 more or so going on stage. Who's going to take the 6 remaining boxes? Am I losing my mic? Yeah. All right, we have some takers. All right, so we hope everyone is sufficiently watered and ready. Are you ready? Have you had some time to take in the wonderful slideshows and maybe dive into some nostalgia? Well, we are certainly ready to get this evening started. Again, thank you all for indulging us while we sorted out our technical challenges, but we are happy to announce that we are ready to begin. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the soft launch of the Queer Archives of Trinidad and Tobago. I think we can put our hands together for that. Okay, so my name, are you hearing me? Yeah? Okay, yeah, we'll press on. So my name is Ardeen Serju, and I have a very simple task this evening, certainly simpler than the project team for the Queer Archives of Trinidad and Tobago. I'll be taking you through the proceedings, which are meant to be very straightforward, relaxed, conversational. I think you get that vibe from just the way we've set up the audience and the space for our conversationalists this evening. So I want to begin by just acknowledging where we are. So for those of you who know this space as Bohemia, put your hands up. For those, for those who've actually attended events at Bohemia. All right, and for those who've never heard of Bohemia, it's okay, don't be shy. It's all right, no judgment. All right, great. So there's a reason why the launch of the Queer Archives is happening here. And it's because this is a really sacred, special space to the queer community of Trinidad and Tobago. And so before it was Black Box, it was actually Bohemia, which has a whole history, which you'll definitely learn a lot more about this evening. So you can look out for that. So we are happy to be here, and I'd like to really put our hands together for Cyrus, who's a big part of the Bohemia legend. And for all the wonderful memories that I know many of you share here. All right, so also we want to acknowledge before we begin the elders in this space. Of course, we have Cyrus, we have Faye, Angelique, who am I missing? Eswick, Conrad, yes, good evening and welcome. All right, so that's how we get things started in this space, right? Sorry, Fabrice, Marlon, anybody else? Y'all can call the names. Okay, Dennis McCormy, of course. Ronald Guy James. Miguel Pinero. Cohen. Okay, definitely. A lot of you here this evening, many of you I may not know, and I do apologize, but thank you all for your help in acknowledging the elders this evening. And I also want to acknowledge our sign interpreters this evening, Maya and Kwashiba. Thank you very much for your amazing service. Okay, so we are going to get started with the project team. I'm going to welcome this evening Nikolai and Angelique, and they're going to tell you so much more about the project itself and tell you more about the people who've been working behind the scenes over the past few months and more so the past few weeks to make sure we could be ready for today. Let's welcome Nikolai and Angelique. Do you have the other page?
Good night, everyone. Good night. Good night. Very exciting night tonight. Just happy to see the space filled with elders, with everyone, with community, people we wind up in the space with, people, we had some good fun building this history together. Are you hearing me? Now we're hearing you. All right, I might have to deep throat it. Right. Yeah, so very exciting night. And I just want to start by introducing the fabulous team who's been working really hard to get us to this point, to the soft launch for the Queer Archives of Trinidad and Tobago. To my right, we have Angelique Nixon, senior lecturer at UE, community activist, artist, all-around fabulous person. Woo, 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 woo. To my left, we have Keith McNeil, visiting us from Houston, has been doing work in Trinidad and Tobago with community for many years. Right next to him, Kathy Shepherd, elder, doing a lot of amazing work with the community as well. My Alessandra Herman, our Guyanese sister, also did a lot of the background work with the Sarah Sylvester collection. Spent a lot of time sifting through the approximately 5,000 photos, videos, other items, and we'll have a chance to chat with Alessandra in a bit. Yannick and Dwayne, our IT guys, who aren't here unfortunately, but they've been the ones working overtime. If you had a chance to engage in the white room in front, you'd have seen the timeline, and I invite you to throughout the night to go check it out, see our history. We have an entry from as early as 1929, and some really exciting stuff. And we'll chat more about how you can engage with the timeline, with the archive over the next few weeks as we move towards a more public launch and more public engagement. And yeah, so thanks to the team, and we're really just excited to be here and holding the space. Angelique.
Hi everyone, good evening, welcome. Everyone can hear me? Okay, all right, great. I will project. So we just wanted to share a little bit about some of our process, because any building an archive takes time. It also takes a lot of thought and consideration about community that you're representing, especially when we are talking about or thinking about any group that experiences marginalization as queer and trans folks do. And so wanted to just share a little bit about our process. I also want to share that I've been working on archives for the past decade, the Caribbean IRN being one archive that we started building back in 2009. Rosamond King, Colin Robinson, Vidya Rathakasoon, and others. We were able to digitize Larry Chang. Do folks know who Larry Chang is?
No.
Yes, great. The founder of the Gay Freedom Movement in Jamaica, which started organizing back in the 1970s. And we thought this was a really important part of our queer Caribbean LGBTQI plus histories and we stories to preserve. And that started a whole process of working to preserve our stories for us, to have an archive that says we've been here a long time, we not new, we not foreign. And so that's a part of this work and the sentiment of building an archive. And so I just want to share a little bit also about some of our ethical protocols that we came up with. I think that it's important to share. And our process for tonight, we will be showing you two parts of this Queer Archives TT, which we see as the beginning of building more and more. So the timeline, which you've already heard about, we're doing a soft launch tonight. And a part of that is because we want to engage with community. You'll get to see some of it tonight. We'll talk through it. And of course, the Cyrus Sylvester Archive, which Nikolai started working on back in 2019. And that process led Nikolai and I to applying for funds because the process of digitizing and doing this work takes money. And so we were able to secure funds in order to do this work. I want to say that the ethical protocols included really spending time and thinking about what things should be public, what things should be private, and what things should be restricted. Now, we know folks want to study our community because it happens all the time. People want to come and study. And so, one of the things that Cyrus and Nikolai spent a lot of time thinking about is what is that process going to be? So, you'll hear about that later when we unroll. But just to say, the images that you're seeing are the public components of Cyrus's collection that will be available in the Digital Library of the Caribbean through the Caribbean IRN collections. And we'll share more about that soon. And I want to also share a little bit about our timeline process, which is that we thought really deeply about what are the significant moments. And Keith McNeil started this process, and he will share more when we launch the timeline. But just to say that we wanted to have this such an event so that we can start to engage with each other, and that you will have lots of opportunities to contribute to the timeline. And we really wanted to be a community effort, and we wanted to build as our and we stories. The other thing we want to share is just briefly a little bit about our funding. And Nikolai is going to share about our funding just now.
Yeah, so as Angelique mentioned, doing this work costs money, and thankfully, we got some opportunities to apply for funding, and we've had some really amazing support, really good, amazing support over the years. See that one?
Use that one.
Hello.
Yeah. Oh, this one's better.
Right. You hear me now? Sorry. And so this project would not have been possible without contributions from the University of the West Indies, the Caribbean Institute for Gender and Development at UWI Cave Hill in Barbados, who gave us some seed funding to start digitizing Cyrus's photos back in 2020. We also got some funding from the Women and Gender Studies Institute at the University of Toronto, some seed funding, and special thanks to Professor Chris Johnson, who gave some of his own money to help with this process of digitizing the collection. And then we also got some funding from the Caribbean Digital Scholarship Collective, another collective that is really interested in documenting and preserving marginalized stories. So stories like ours, right? The Queer Archives of TT was able to, we were able to use that funding to get a lot of this work done. And finally, we got some more funding from Duke University for another documentary process, documenting marginalized communities. So thanks to all these funders. And finally, CAISO has been a really amazing source of support, both in kind contributions and also in other ways. So thanks to the CAISO team for working tirelessly and supporting us to get us to this point. And we're excited to continue working with other groups, with community members, to see how we could really keep, building on the momentum to get this really amazing work done.
All right. Thank you so much, Angelique and Nikolai. Can we thank them together with a round of applause? And at this time, I'll ask Alessandra and Cyrus to come forward. It seems we have one working mic at the moment, so we'll have to share that. Angelique, I may have to displace you temporarily. Okay, so in the meantime, we'll hear a little bit about Cyrus, because we are going to talk next.
Just come back a little bit. Talk to everybody.
Maybe you can hear me. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. This is good. Okay. Ooh, there we go. Right on time. So as we get ready to launch the Cyrus Sylvester collection, I think we should hear more about Cyrus. Popularly known by many as Uncle Cyrus, Cyrus Sylvester is best remembered for the Bohemia brand, named for the legendary Woodbrook house that he and the late Godfrey Seeley shared with the LGBT community. Bohemia grew under Cyrus's stewardship into Trinidad and Tobago's key center for LGBT safety, community, and social activity, home to the annual Bohemia Juve Party, the annual Pride Candlelight Memorial, the Friends for Life chat room, and many other community-related events. You all remember all of those? All right. Cyrus is one of the community's respected elders and continues to be an HIV educator advocate for well over 2 decades. His expertise has been recognized through recruitment to staff teams responsible for the formation and execution of several key population HIV outreach initiatives and research projects. Cyrus was a founding member of the NGO's Community Action Resource, CARE, and MSM Plus. He also served on the founding board of directors of KAISO and is currently the acting vice chairperson for the NGO Patient Advocate Mission, PAM. He spent many years in theatrical arena, where he co-produced plays under the umbrella of the Playhouse Company and also constructed sets for many of the local theatre production houses. From his secondary school days at Trinity College, I should say from as early as, Cyrus began developing an eye for photography and over the years went about recording persons and events in the community, helping to lend to the tapestry that makes up part of our history. Let's welcome Cyrus Sylvester again, folks. And, and he's joined now by Nikolai and Alessandra as they talk about the Cyrus Sylvester collection.
Good. So big up to Cyrus. Thanks for documenting our community, taking that care to ensure that we see ourselves across generations in this amazing collection. So let's big up Cyrus one more time. So we really just want to take this opportunity to just chat with Uncle Cyrus, chat with Alessandra. You'll have an opportunity to ask any questions, and we just have a nice time. So Cyrus, I want to start with you. So we've been in the archive. We see photos from as early as the 80s, and I'm wondering if you could just reflect a bit on some of the insight you gained from taking the photos, but also in spending the last few years going back through the photos and sitting with them. So tell us a bit about what this means for you.
Good night, everybody. Now, the photo project that I've been working on, when I think about it and my introduction to photography and started to photograph the community, I cannot go forward without saying this. Even though I had this love for photography and I started photographing the community from around 1985 thereabout, what really propelled me to continue photographing the community was the fact that so many of us, the HIV pandemic came on stream around 1982, and I literally came out into the pandemic, and so many of our brothers and sisters, our community members, they were falling ill and they were dying, and in 1995, how many years later, the Photo Memorial Wall came into being, and what would happen? I would go to my photo albums, and I would see people, who have gone, and it continued to grow. But outside of that, my love for photography developed, and I started photographing at any event, But some of the memorable moments that I can speak to photographing the community would have been the challenges, a lot of the challenges that the community was facing, being decimated by HIV and AIDS. And moving forward, the achievements, that medication was available, Photo Memorial Wall was no longer growing because, so many persons were no longer dying. And there are lots of positives. People were being put on medication, they were becoming undetectable, they were living longer, healthier lives. But it is unfortunate that after 40 years of HIV in Trinidad and Tobago, persons are still getting ill, persons are still dying. And as an HIV advocate, I continue on a daily basis, to encourage persons, get tested. If you are tested, medication is available and it is free. There are lots of other, pinpoints within this journey that I can speak to. So I would have photographed guys who migrated from very early. They started migrating, going to North America, to Europe and stuff like that. And looking back in the photo album, I recognize that I would have shared all of these persons. They would have shared my journey with me. All of the persons who are displayed in those photographs, videos, whether I knew them on a personal level, yes or no, they shared part of my journey with me. There are some who are still sharing this journey with me. And I reflect, I have seen persons, I've seen friends come together, develop relationships. Some of them are still together today, and some of them, they no longer speak to one another. I have seen the migration. I have documented the migration of a lot of persons of trans experience, for want of a better term, going elsewhere, possibly because the grass was green on the other side. And I reflect and I shared that journey with them. For a lot of persons, it might be, but I have gone over those albums time and time again. And there became a time when I no longer wanted to go to the albums because it became somewhat depressing. I saw the community falling apart. I saw the community falling apart. But we are a community of persons. We live in revelry, and we are creative, and we are very artistic. We love to party, and so a lot of the events were documented. The parties, the linemen, they having a good time and stuff like that. Right? But also, what is documented, a lot of the funerals, a lot of the depressing things as well, because our history cannot be all of what made up the good. We also have to include what made up the bad. I have seen persons in the prime of their life, young, youthful, now come out, so to speak. And over the years, I have seen their features change. And I was able to document a lot of this. And I reflect and I say, wow, look at life. Our life is so fragile. Our life is so fragile. I have learned a very important lesson that this life that we live, it is so short. It is shorter than we think. It is so fragile. Why waste time, perpetuating hate and anger when we can all live in peace, because tomorrow is not promised to any of us. Right? And I can go on and speak to moments during this journey that stood out for me, but we'll be here whole night. And I know there are other things, on the agenda.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So a big part of this process would not have been possible without the amazing Alessandra here, but really sitting with the archive over the years and doing the hard work of sifting through photos, categorizing, recategorizing, deleting, putting in other folders and stuff. So, Alessandra, but before, I want you to do two things for us. Tell us a bit about who you are, because Alessandra is also doing some really amazing and important work on trans life histories in Guyana. And I just wonder if you could reflect a bit on what that process of just sitting with that archive was like for you. And again, some things you may have learned just in this process. So tell us who you are, some of the amazing work you're doing, and what dealing with this archive means for you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alessandra Herman, pronouns she and her. I'm a Guyanese trans woman. I've been involved in LGBT activism and trans movement building for almost 10 years. What else? I've worked at all levels of organizing. Grassroots level, I've worked with the Guyana Trans United, which is the organization that led the Guyana cross-dressing case. I've also worked with, I'm a nervous wreck. I have social anxiety disorder, so please bear with me. I also worked with USAID donors, so I have the experience understanding LGBT activism from two sides of the movement. Those who work at the grassroots level, where resources are often constrained, and then those who are in the funding position, making the decision on what to fund and who to fund. I'm presently the Caribbean Program Officer for Australia Lesbian Foundation for Justice. I'm supporting the philanthropic advocacy work and grant making for the Caribbean portfolio. We presently support 16 organizations across the Caribbean. Womantra, Feminine, two of our grantee partners in the room at the moment. So yeah, my journey coming out as a trans person almost 10 years ago and started engaging in HIV education and sexual and reproductive health and rights for marginalized community has brought me this far. I'm presently an MPhil candidate at the University of the West Indies pursuing um, interdisciplinary gender studies. And I've been associated with CAISO, started working as a volunteer, like most LGBT people. We started off as volunteering. And yeah, when Nikolai shared that the opportunity exists to work in the archives, I was really excited. The reason why I was excited is because this project is closely aligned to what I'm doing at the MPhil level, my thesis. So I'm looking at transgressive gender and sexual experiences in the post-colonial Guyana context. So I am interviewing elders, people who are 50 years and older, who would have had transgressive gender and sexual experiences growing up in the 1960s and 1970s Guyana. And the reason why I decided to do that as my MPhil project is against the backdrop of the anti-gender opposition and the anti-rights opposition we're seeing where gender is being weaponized. And this whole idea that we hear that being trans, queer, or gender non-conforming is a Western import to the Caribbean and part of what they call ideological colonization. And I want to refute that claim by saying, hey, although in the 1960s and 1970s we didn't have organized, politicized, quote unquote, LGBT activism, people who transgress normative genders and sexualities existed at that time. And so that is why I'm interviewing persons. The oldest person I've interviewed is an 80-year-old Guyanese woman, loving woman. And I also have people who are in their 60s, people who are in their 70s. And so because that is my own research project, having the opportunity to work in the Sarah Sylvester digital collection, I was really excited because I know that this opportunity to work in the archive would provide guidance to me in understanding how do we engage with the archives and how do we engage in queer history and queer archiving, because at first I was really excited and I think I over romanticized the idea of queer archiving. But as Sarah shared, there were moments I remember working in the Pride Memorial folder, and I saw someone there lighting a candle in front of the memorial wall, and then I went through probably Pride Memorial 1995, Pride Memorial 1996, Pride Memorial 1997, and then I saw a photo on the Pride Memorial wall. And I said, I recognize this face. And I actually went back into the previous year, and that person was 3 years before there, lighting a candle, honoring their colleagues who would have passed away and their friends who would have passed away from the HIV AIDS pandemic of that time. And 3 years after, they are on the wall. And so, very early engaging with the Sarah Sylvester Archive, I've learned to strike a balance between, yes, acknowledging that there are moments of joy within queer history, but also recognizing the pain, the struggles that queer and trans people would have gone through at that time. I think I give the introduction and I'm processing everything in one, but I do have my notes just to talk a bit about the technical aspect of curating the archive. The process was very meticulous. We had to pay great attention to detail. So Cyrus and I would spend many hours going through the folders. Sometimes we spend 2 hours just going through a folder that has 20 photos only. And so Cyrus would provide a great deal of insight about the political, social, economic context that would help us to write a paragraph that would accompany the images or the videos. So for example, I learned that 1991 Play a Mass was a satirical play of the 1990 coup that happened in Trinidad and Tobago. So we spent a lot of time engaging in that. I also had to do some cleaning of the content. So for example, photo deduplication, running through all the photos through photo deduplication software, ensuring that we have unique content and there are no repetition of videos or photographs. And we ended up with over 5,000 entry in the Cyrus Sylvester digital collection. Part of the process also, as Nikolai mentioned, was cataloging and putting items into specific thematic folders relevant to queer and trans movements. So, for example, there are folders that we team as activism, but also recognizing that queer is overlapping. You can't really put things into neat distinct categories. So some items might be in community, then some items might be coded and categorized as activism. There are some items that would be coded as party, some as pride, some as pride memorial. Some of the memorable entries that I want to share briefly before I hand over the mic. I'm talking a lot for someone who has social anxiety. Right. So what I learned is of the first documented gender illusion pageant that we know of, that happened in 1997 at the Sidewalk Cafe. And back then in 1997, you had both male and female drag performers at that pageant. Who was the person that organized it?
1997.
1997.
Supergirl and Clementine.
Yes. I also learned that in 1989, and some of the images of Ada would be projected here, that was a strict theater on safe sex and protecting oneself against HIV. I think for me, it was profound to learn that in 1989, our community was engaged in public sex education, something that people have moral panic over. It was happening since 1989, right? I also learned, I shared this already, that 1991 Home Sweet Home play was a play on the, no, sorry. The 1991 Home Sweet Home was a play on domestic violence. What was interesting about this play is that the directors included obscene language to really reflect the reality of domestic violence. Because if you're somebody experiencing domestic violence and you are the perpetrator, you're likely to cuss and use obscene language, right? So they used that, and the police actually came to arrest the actor because the actor used obscene language, and the theater fraternity came together and they protested, and there were photos of people in 1991 in front of the courthouse protesting and standing up for their right to freedom of expression. So that was interesting for me. And finally, the first Bohemia invite that we have in the entry is of 1994. 1994, I was 1 year, 5 months old. And something that I keep doing is that as I engage with the archive, I try to look at my own life, like where I was then. And so looking at a Bohemia party invite from 1994 and thinking like I was 1 year, 5 months old. And then the formation of Cara Flags happened in 1997. I was about 4 or 5 years old at that time, probably resisting boyhood socialization and playing with dolls. So it was really a great opportunity to engage with this archive, and the work is not done because the archive is a living project and we continue to work on it.
Good. So in the interest of time, I think we have time for two questions. So if anyone has any burning questions you'd like to ask either Cyrus or Alessandra, now is the time. Any questions, anyone? Yes, Luke?
I wanted to just like Cyrus, as you reflect on the very many years and kind of looking back, because my thing is that we don't think necessarily about the way that we contribute to the global kind of experience of LGBT stuff. And I know that in Trinidad, we do have this kind of happy culture, and that does translate because because you've been like to the US, so you know when you go across there how Trinis are and how people treat Trinis. Does that kind of resonate also in other cultures? that some of the Trini words, because I even like sometimes I'll say like freck and thing like, oh, she frecked herself. And does that thing translate into other cultures as well?
I don't know, Luke, if I fully understand the question.
Yeah,
I know pertaining to the queer community. When you ask if it translates into other cultures, if you could be a bit more specific.
no.
Okay.
Oh, you want the man answer the question?
We don't understand the question.
I was kind of thinking through thinking about carnival and how carnival has influenced other carnivals in other parts of the world. I was musing, does gay culture in Trinidad also influence gay culture in other spaces? So if you've been in another space, does that also translate?
No, no, I know for a fact. I know for a fact that we borrow from each other, and especially now with the internet, we see what we see on the internet, we copy and we reproduce. And Trinis, oftentimes it is said that Trinis are copycats. We go to New York for 2 days and we start speaking Yankee. Um, So to ask to answer your question, if it is that we export our culture, or if it is that we influence other cultures as LGBT persons, I would say yes, definitely, because we borrow and we add, and for as someone who may be queer, of trans experience, or let me say yet better yet, a drag queen or someone who's performing in a pageant, we borrow and we add and we embellish and we adopt and we pass on, right? So the older ones, the elders, they would pass on, their craft, they will pass on their talents to the younger ones, and this is how the culture continues to spread, and we continue to influence cultures. I don't know if that answers the question. Look, Senate, Alessandra was just making reference to the Bohemian Party. I'm, I'm sorry. I, I'm sorry about that. So Alessandra was making reference to the Bohemian Party. And yes, so persons would have come from abroad, attended the Bohemian Party. They would have, indulged in our experience. And some of them would have taken our experience and transported it or exported it back to their culture, to add to their culture. It has happened and it continues to happen.
If I could add quickly, the way I'm thinking to respond to your question is that in Trinidad, the queer culture is unique because you exist at the intersection of queer and carnival. And so when Bolivia started launching Bolivia parties in the 1990s, during the carnival season, it was an opportunity for queer people to come and be a part of queer moment and queer carnival moments. So yes, queer Trinidad culture has attracted an international audience.
Yeah, so we have one question at the back. If you could just come right here.
Okay, hi. Sorry, I'm behind you. I feel bad. Yes, thank you. I just had a sort of more technical question, I guess, which is it a totally visual archive, like photos and videos? Are there other types of resources in there? And also, I have well, in relation to that, um, kind of how did you decide on the categories for things. I'm also an activist, so I do the metadata stuff, and I'm a little bit like, how do you decide what category to put things in? Do you put them in multiple categories? I mean, that would be a kind of queer archive praxis as well. So, like, how did you decide on that, and what other kind of resources slash will be in the archive?
Right. Those are great questions. So at the moment, behind the scenes, items are Yeah, behind the scenes items are in specific categories. So for example, let's say if activism has 500 photos, that's 500 unique photos in activism. In community organizing, there is going to be different items. But when we launch it for public on the viewing side, what we're going to do is the tag. So activism could be tagged as activism, community organizing, community. So that way people, when they're viewing, they could see multiple thematic areas. Of one item. So for example, this could be tagged as a play, it could tag as carnival pantomime, it could be tagged as community something. So that's how we came up with the categories. We thought that the categories were relevant to queer community life in Trinidad. So for example, as Cyrus mentioned, this work really started against the backdrop of the AIDS pandemic of the 80s and 90s, and so we start from there. Activism. The oldest entry we have for the Cyrus Sylvester digital collection is 1988, Rural AIDS Project. And so we build from there chronologically as well as thematically. Yeah. Sure.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I know that there's a lot fomenting right now in people's minds with the information we've just received. Can we thank Alessandra, Cyrus, and Nikolai, please? And thank you all for your questions.
Yeah, there's soup and food for sale at the back. There's food for sale at the back.
Oh, okay. I've been asked to let you all know that there's food on sale at the back if anyone is interested. And I'm not sure if we covered it, but only 200 of the items are currently accessible to the public, yes? Of the 5,000 in the Sarah's Sylvester collection. So please take note of that. And you'll get more information about that process as well online, especially if you go and interact with the interface in the other room there. All right, so now we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is in the vein of the soft launch of this event. We are soft launching the public LGBTQI plus timeline. Yeah, we're ready for that, Angelique? Yes, great. So I invite now to the front of the stage, Kathy, Keith, and we have web developer with us, Dwayne Smith.
What do you want to show?
Not sure. Dwayne Swift, sorry. Oh, he's ill. Oh, I'm sorry. So Kathy and Keith will be in conversation as we talk about the timeline. Let's welcome them, folks.
Yeah, so but you'll start.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So happy to be here. So happy for the turnout. Elders, community members, everyone. It's really special to me. And I wrote what I want to say, so I'll stay on point and not talk too much. My name is Keith McNeil. I'm an associate professor of anthropology at the University of Houston. So to begin on a personal note, I am absolutely thrilled to be here on this auspicious occasion in very esteemed company. I'm not Trinbagonian by birth or citizenship, but I've been in and out of Trinidad and Tobago for 27 years, about 13 plus years living here, which is longer than I've lived anywhere else in my adult life. Kind of interesting to realize that at this point in time. Trinidad has had a huge, really incalculable influence on who I am as a person, who I am as a researcher and anthropologist, a professor, and also who I am as a queer man. I've loved, lusted, had my heart broken here. I've learned the meaning of community, activism, and care here, including recently working with this amazing badass team. And I've been able to much more deeply, and indeed been compelled to much more deeply understand my own racial, cisgender, class, and national privileges here than I ever would have in the USA, which is where I'm from. TNT has also helped me interrogate and unthink dominant assumptions about visibility and facile ideas about freedom. So my work on this project is really, for me personally, a labor of love. Just an effort to give back to a community that has given so much to me since 1997. So now for a few words about the timeline to introduce this project and its origins before I pass it on to Kathy. As an anthropologist and wannabe historian, I have long been involved in all sorts of research and scholarly projects on various topics, far afield from queer studies, from queer life and culture here. But as someone who's lived through the advent of the internet, the advent of cell phones, and so on and so forth, I knew I would eventually write a book about my own tribe, so to speak, here one day, but I was in no rush. Remember, I started coming to Trinidad in 1997. So I started doing formal research on in this area on this front as a Fulbright scholar with the Institute for Gender and Development Studies after my first book on African and Hindu religions came out in 2011. One strand of that research has involved, since 2011, interviewing elders, documenting life histories. I have almost 100 recorded life histories, fully systematic life histories. They're usually about 2 to 4 hours long, and talking to all kinds of people in all kinds of directions about many aspects and dimensions of the community's past. Then in 2022, Pride TT approached me and they asked me to compile. Some of them knew that I had been doing this research steadily all those years. So I was approached to compile some information for a historical timeline of significant events for what was to be the centerfold for their 5th anniversary souvenir magazine. I worked feverishly nonstop for all of May 2022, literally, compiling information, going back through endless recorded interviews on my laptop, chasing people down. Cyrus, I've harassed and badgered Cyrus more times than probably either one of us could ever count. Tracking down literally hundreds of people all over TNT, but all over the world, Japan, Spain, Canada, all over the place. And of course, one thing leads to the other. You talk to someone and they say, hey, go talk to that person, but I'm trying to figure out this date. Okay, here's their WhatsApp contact, talk to them, so the whole thing just kind of kept expanding and spiraling, and I really was like manic for a month. So unfortunately, that magazine never came out for reasons I'm not privy to, but I was left with a 20-page single-spaced document of TNT LGBTQ history that had no home. So I kind of sat with that for a little while and just kind of thinking, what can I do with this? It's all this work. I mean, I am finishing a book that will come out in the next year or two. And of course, this information and what I've learned and the perspective I have will be represented in that book, but it's just so much information. So in the meantime, Yannick Gibson, who is not here, unfortunately, he had been contracted as the creative director for the Pride TT souvenir magazine effort. He and I had been acquainted for some years, but that was the first time that we ever worked together in any substantive manner. So as I began contemplating and brainstorming about what to do with the timeline draft, Yannick became my muse. And he was enthusiastic from the get-go about my idea, which was an emerging one in, let's say, mid-2022, for an interactive, user-friendly online timeline, one that is specifically conceptualized and programmed to grow, expand, and evolve based on feedback and content submission from the community. In other words, a community-based living archive that, I contributed an initial amount of content, but the point was for it to grow, become community-based, become community-sourced, and continue to evolve. So it was dear Yannick who saw and appreciated the vision from the outset, and he helped me develop the concept. So I do want to, even though he's not here, I do want to publicly thank him tonight, for being my partner in crime for this venture, helping me get to this point. Then last year, yes. Then last year when Angelique told me that about Nikolai's efforts with the Cyrus Sylvester Archive and that they were thinking of applying to the very same Caribbean Digital fellowship grant that Yannick and I were contemplating applying for, we all decided to team up and go for the funding together and collaborate on what we are all now here, what we are now presenting to you here and launching tonight. So, for their extraordinary synergistic work as a truly badass team on all of this, making the timeline become something much, much, much more than I could have ever accomplished on my own. I want to conclude by thanking Angelique Nixon, Nikolai Atai, Psyche Gonzalez, who is not here, Alessandra Harriman, Dwayne Swift, who is not here, unfortunately, but he is the programmer that we hired to write the code for this really super cool project that you're going to get introduced to now. And Yannick Gibson was the web developer, so Dwayne was doing the kind of backstage, behind the scenes technical stuff, and Yannick was thinking about visuals, thinking about how the user experience would be, and helping bring my initial, how I had imagined it into fruition. And also, last but not least, Kathy Shepard, who operated as archivist extraordinaire. Doing some amazing work in the archive, so I'll let her talk about that.
So, good night, everybody. I am Kathy Shepard, and I'm a director with CAISO Sex and Gender Justice. And I just want to talk, I'm going to be very brief, a little bit about the origins of this timeline that Keith just spoke about. But I just want to acknowledge the contributions of three people. Jeffrey McLean, late architect and art historian, who wrote a memoir for CAISO shortly after CAISO was formed in 2009. Colin Robinson, the late CAISO co-founder, whose G-Spot blog documented CAISO's early activism before other social media channels dominated, and from whom I am still learning so much about the value of documenting our stories and our experiences. And finally, Keith McNeil, who first shared the timeline with me in April 2023 for his years of research and the idea for this interactive living archive developed with community input. In terms of my role in this process, I'm a librarian by training, but that doesn't mean shit. However, it helped, and my role was one of researching, fact-checking, amplifying, and co-editing entries on the timeline, identifying and listing media to support entries, and requesting permissions for use, and for each entry, ascribing its media configuration, short title, and broad subject heading classification to facilitate online searching on the website. In terms of the sources and contributors to this project, I just want to highlight the multiple informants of Keith, Nikolai, and Cyrus, the National Archives newspaper collection, and I should mention, I forgot to mention it here, but I should say that one of the highlights for me of doing this exercise was Keith just had a year, 1977, a famous, legendary weekend house party in Coquet Village. And I went to the National Archives, and after days of combing through, because I just had a year, 1976 and 1977 newspapers, I hit on these famous clippings, And Ronald Guy James is in the house, and he is pictured. If Angelique would just scroll up, we can see him in the tie, finding these press reports of this famous November 1976, labeled by the press, Ganja Party at Colgate Village. This famous raid that I found in the National Archives newspaper collection after days of searching, it was a real needle in the haystack, and the highlight for me of my work in this exercise. So big up to the National Archives and big up to my fellow librarians. The Heritage Library newspaper clipping files. I have been doing newspaper clipping files since my very first library job in 1981 at UNECLAC, and I was so appreciative of the Heritage Library's collection to gather information about these many plays that I went to in the 80s that touched on the subjects covered in this important LGBTQI timeline. We use online newspaper archives as well as personal websites, Facebook pages, thank God for Facebook, YouTube, publications that included scholarly research, journal articles, as well as biographies, and of course, last but not least, community feedback and input. And I think more will be shared on that in a little bit. So that's what I wanted to touch on in this section here, and I will hand over again to Keith.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit about it was literally years of, so when I first came in 97, meeting people, going to parties, talking to folks, I heard about this party from the 70s where folks were doing drag and jumped out of the window and then on a fig tree, and then were running and climbing over the fence, and then the curtains that they had picked up to do drag got stuck in the fence, and there's all kind of everything. So, but I was trying to figure out, well, when did it happen? You know, we knew it was 70s. So I talked to many people, and you know, of course, memory is imperfect, and the 70s are a while ago. You know, so people are like, well, I can't remember. I don't know. What was it, 75? You think it's 76? You know, me trying to be really precise, couldn't figure it out. But it was pretty clear that it was like, you know, maybe 75 to 70, like mid to late 70s, let's say. This is before I talked to Ronald. So I was searching. Then, actually, Conrad, where's Conrad? Yeah, he was here. So then at a certain moment, like maybe 2014, 2015, Conrad and I were hanging out. We were chit-chatting about all kind of things, but not about this. And somehow it came up in conversation. Something about Patrick Williams, the nephew of Eric Williams, in London, right? So I just freaked out. My antenna went up immediately, and I was like, wait, rewind. What? And he said, yeah, Patrick Williams. And I said, wait, do you have contact information for Patrick? Because I knew that he had been there. Eric Williams' nephew, his gay nephew, was one of the people arrested in that party. So so he came up, he pulled out his computer, he found 2 email addresses. I immediately emailed both of them, and one of them came back immediately, error, this email does not exist. So my heart sank. But for days, I think it was maybe 5, 6, 7 days, I didn't hear anything. So I was kind of just giving up. Again, trying to figure out the details of this particular incident, the chronology, the actual getting as precise as I could. So, but then like a week later, I got an email from Patrick Williams saying, hi, yeah, it's me. Ding, ding, ding. One thing led to the other. I was in Europe the next year. I spent a weekend with Patrick Williams in his little tiny apartment in East London, interviewing him about everything, interviewing him about the party, but he also couldn't figure out the date. But I was closing in because he migrated in 79, so I knew it was before 79, and he said it was more than a year before he migrated, so I was like, okay, it's probably not 78. And at some point when I thought it was either 76 or 77, through talking to Ronald and some other people. Jason Jones, I think his opinion was when we spoke, 76. So that's, at some point I just said, okay, fine. We'll never know. It was something like that. And then Kathy found it. Honestly, I almost fainted when she messaged the group and sent this picture. I practically fainted in my chair. So she did truly find a needle in a haystack.
Oh, which one is Eric?
Patrick. Patrick's not there now.
Patrick not there.
So we have the whole, we've been able to reconstruct. Patrick talked about, they were in jail. They went to, it was not that Nigel Burrows, who the car was sent to go pick him up and bring him back up north. And then they had to be in court in San Fernando that Monday morning. And she also, Kathy found not only the original newspapers, but also the follow-up court dates. They would run through the paparazzi, and but now we have, I think, 3 or 4 newspaper articles related to that incident, and we know the exact dates. So, example of one entry. Yeah. So anyway, they got Kathy on that one. Nice. Yeah, okay, sure. So the timeline is conceptualized, it's programmed to be a very easy, user-friendly, interactive interface. It's organized by decades. You can see 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and so on. And then so you can go in through different, you can go in by decade, or you can search by a particular year, or you can search by a particular event. And then there's stuff that's hyperlinked. So if you go in, like you saw with the Coquier village raid in San Fernando in November 21st, 1976, you can click on it and a window will pop up and it'll give you like a little summary of the important information, dates that we know, and then any content that we've been able to source. So photos, videos, URLs, YouTube, we have when Molly Briggsall won Mastana Bahar in drag in 1992. There is actually like 6 videos of Molly Briggsall on YouTube, but once you go looking, you never know what you'll find online. So URLs, web links, any kind of content that we've been able to source to accompany the information is in each of these windows. Yeah, here's a good example. Here's the 1992, Molly Briggsall winning Mastana Bahar. And yeah, so there's so much more. This is just, this is a substantive slice of history, but it's only a slice. There's so much more there. There's so much more to be uncovered, documented. The categories.
Yeah. So we as I said, we just did very broad subject categories to group the entries. So we have activism, arts, business, community, health, law, media, people, which we haven't fleshed out as yet. It will be, you notice that there's a menu item for people and places. We have more places than people, but people is a work in progress, where we will do sort of like biographical information of people mentioned in the timeline. We also have politics, religion, and research. So, and of course, some entries will have more than one subject heading, depending on what is the entry is. Yeah?
One last thing to say is another idea that's come up is places, right? So we're talking about such and such bar in the 90s on Bronx in Chiguanas or June's in Curup or whatever it is, So we have a fantasy about having like a live map of TNT. So when you're there, you could click on the place, June's bar in Curup, and then it would actually take you to another page that would have TNT geographically, and you'd be able to see where the place was located, and so basically link back and forth and have it all connect all the dots. So there's so much work to do. We would love for people who are interested in contributing, helping out with these kinds of things, especially tech savvy people. would be great. So, but this really is just it's a launch at the beginning, and it's intended to be a community-based, community-sourced living archive.
Thank you so much, Keith and Kathy, for your sleuthing. Very effective. We are appreciative of it. I think the entire project, what we've heard about the Cyrus Sylvester collection and the timeline are actually such an inspiration. And I was saying to Nikolai, it also presents a model and a kind of example for what is possible in other communities and other spaces. So thank you all to the project team, to Kaiso, to the funders, to the wider community who supported this effort into getting us here. And of course, we know that in 2024, we'll see Tonight go down on the timeline, right? The launch of the Queer Archives of TNT. It's there already. Good. Thank you, Kathy. Of course it is. All right, so now I'll welcome Angelique again to introduce the next item, which is a video, the Inclusive Futures Project, which you will tell us a little bit more about.
Well, because it's very hot and we're concerned about people melting, I think Nikolai and I were saying maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about Inclusive Futures. And it is a project we are launching sometime in November. And a part of it was inspired through Archive. And one of the videos, sorry, let me tell you first. Inclusive Futures is a campaign that is a public education campaign to confront the anti-gender, anti-rights, and anti-LGBT moment we're in. And we recruited a bunch of folks to do some script writing and creating a series of videos. We also will have a fact sheet and we will have a social media campaign. One of our videos is called Age in a Life, and it features a cross-generational conversation with elders and with folks of different ages. And this happens to include Cyrus, our very own Cyrus, and Kathy, as well as others. We wanted to get a sense of what is our coming of age journey. And this was actually Alessandra's idea in thinking about, how do we think about gender across years? And so we brainstormed this. We had a whole group of folks doing script writing, and we have a lovely series of videos. We also have videos that will be battling misconceptions about gender and sexuality. We'll also have one that features sexual and reproductive health and rights, the idea of my body, my rights, and how that's connected to sexual rights. So please look out for that, and there will be one that features Cyrus, Kathy, and others. And a part of their process of bringing in and talking about their journey was bringing in an artifact from their life. And so it really ties in with our archives, and we're really looking forward to that launch. So I wanted to share that with you all. And then Nikolai are going to close by telling you what's next. So this, come closer. So the website is not live yet. What we've done is we're engaging in a community review with leaders and across LGBTQI organizations, as well as some of the elders and folks who wanted to engage and offer more. And so there'll be an opportunity over the next 2 weeks for folks to add to the timeline before we make it live. We're hoping to complete that process by the end of November and have a live Queer Archives TT site for you. And once you are able, anyone can engage with it, and there's a little, Nikolai's going to show you, there's a little button that when you're on the timeline, you can just actually submit an entry. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about our process, which is that what we want folks to do is engage, you can submit. And when you're on the timeline, you can scroll. There should be a button. I think you can't see it. Look on the screen. Nikolai. You can't see it on the screen. Do you see the plus? Aha. So there's a little plus button on the right side. You can't see it right now, but it lets you submit. And what we want to do is have a community review panel of about 9 to 15 people, however many people volunteer to be a part of it. And we're going to review this every 6 months and add to the timeline. So we'll have a process, but we want to be open and flexible to what folks want to do as we move through. So if you're interested, of course, let us know. And you can also, we have some sheets inside if you want to sit with the timeline tonight as you have your drink. And we're going to give out cupcakes in a few minutes and have some to dancing and talking, you can go ahead and submit your entry tonight if you wanted to as well. The other thing we're going to show you under collections. So Cyrus's collection, as we said, there are three components to Cyrus's collection. There's the private that will only be, Cyrus has a hard drive with that material and Nikolai. There's restricted, and one has to request permission and engage in a process of ethical review to use that material. And then the 200 items that have been selected for public use will be featured on Digital Library of the Caribbean under Caribbean IRN collections. And that will be ready and starting to launch from Monday. So you'll be able to find that. And so we will share announcements as these things roll out. And I think hopefully you've gotten a sense that this takes time and there's a little process. But we also want to engage the community as much as possible in this. And yeah, I think that's what we want to share with you. If you have more questions about it, we also want to just highlight again in terms of engaging ethically with the archive. If you have items that you think you want to include or you want to share on the timeline, of course you can submit that. We also want to encourage you to think about the process of that. Are folks okay with being included? We had to go through a whole process of thinking about names, and some folks have adjusted their sexuality and gender identity can shift and change over time. Some people who might have been okay in the 80s or 90s might not be okay today. So when you are engaging with the timeline and you are submitting, please also think about that process for yourself. Like, is it someone who might want their name to be there? Are they a public figure? What are the ways that we can, and we want to go through a process of verifying as much as possible, and through our community knowledge as well, what we want on this community timeline. And then finally, I just want to say for Cyrus's collection is Cyrus's collection. You can't add to that. That's his collection. But if you have a collection that you think you want to build, I was just talking with someone in the back who was sharing, oh, I have this and I have that. And I was like, yes. So talk to Nikolai and I, because we want to create space for us to have more collections and engage with you all as we do this work. Yeah, I think that we're gonna wrap up there, but we want to do a little toast. We want to first do just some acknowledgement of folks who have passed away first, and pour some libation before we go into toasting and celebrating. So we can just take a few moments wherever you are, and if you feel like closing your eyes, if you want to say names out loud, let's just take a few minutes and think about those who passed on. Think about those who are spirit is here with us right now, especially in this sacred space that so many people created community here from our community. And let's just take a moment and hold them close to us and call them into the space with us tonight. Ashe. Thank you. Thank you for that. And we want to also think about this space. So we have a candle we're going to light for Black Box, but also the spirit of Bohemia that is still here with us. And so we're going to keep that candle lit while we dance and have a toast.
All right, so we are waiting for the glasses to, and the cupcakes. So there will be cupcakes and wine shared. All right, so I think we'll have some DJ while we await that, and then we'll get the toast done. Thank you, everyone.
They were in front. They took the lead. Yes, and we thank them for that. So, lift your glasses up to Bohemia, or shall I say, to the queer archives. Yes, and to all who will contribute and build the archive. Drink up.
Cheers. Yay!
Woo, thank you, Ezric. Is there anyone else? We have time for just one more toast this evening. One more. Is there anyone who'd like to? Sure.
Oh, just want to just announce that someone is blocking our car. TEB2223. Okay. Okay. So I'm asked to say something too. So I'm just going to say something quickly. So good evening, everyone. My name is Keston. Um, I want to say thank you for the groups coming together to archive this. I was just speaking with Cyrus and I just said to him that it reminds me of Interview with a Vampire, um, which is we feel like we are all vampires in a sense where we are all night walkers, but some of us are day walkers and some of us want to be seen and some don't want to be seen. And so the archiving actually gave an accountability to a time that happened, and having it being archived and people seeing it, not now but for future, it actually says this happened and these people were a part of the existence that is going to be not now but way beyond in the future. So I would say thank you so much to Cyrus and to the group of archivers, and also the one thing that I want to say again to Cyrus, as I say, I remember him when he took pictures when I first came out, and he would take pictures and put it onto the wall. One of the things that people would say is that I don't want to be taking pictures. I don't want no pictures from Cyrus because I would end up on the wall. And I remember one time at him saying that he's not doing this again and all of that. But the fact that he continued doing it showed resilience in more ways than one as a community and as a person to actually keep doing and being the bookkeeper or the gatekeeper to something bigger than himself. So thank you so much for your contribution to the history of the gay community in Trinidad and Tobago. And hopefully we have you inspired many others to want to do that and to continue it. So thank you again.
Sure.
Hi, good night, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, welcome again inside the big black box. I just want to say something to Cyrus and to many other people who have been around me in my life. But Cyrus, I mean, thank you very much for the service, Virgin. Virgin, I remember the day I come and I meet with you here with my sister and we talk about how this thing could go forward and it manifests into the big black box, right? I remember that day, right? We was looking to do a village at Bohemia and then it ended up the big black box with Tree Canal. Give thanks and praise. But hold on, I want to also see and recognize John Isaacs, right? Because at the end of the day, come February 9th will be 25 years that John has passed. All right, and his testimony to the man that I still standing up here because he took time out to help me to understand, to listen to myself while I was singing. I wasn't a singer. I came to Tricanal as a chanter, just doing the kind of, that hip hop kind of raga thing. And but inevitably I've become a singer, right? So I give thanks for that too as well. But there are many people along the way. I mean, Claude Allium, Jeffrey Stanford. I could go on and on, eh? I remember them along the days from Minchell and coming up. And as we say, you doesn't want to make the wall, but a lot of people have made the wall, right? So we give thanks and praise and we give reverence to them too as well. I would like to say that we appreciate that you all are here tonight to celebrate with us the fact that this is a part of us. You understand? This is the people, for the people, by the people. You know what I mean? We are doing this on our own accord, despite all the disparity and all the negativity that we will face as a community. Right? And I give thanks for that. I just want to say to everybody who came out tonight. All reach home safe, take all the time on the road, and by extension, have a good time.
All right, well, there's nothing else to be said. Thank you to everyone who came to give your own remarks, make a toast, recognize those who've gone before. All that's left to be said now is have a good time. Hopefully the music, yeah, we're ready to go with the music. All right, so have a good one, folks. Be safe.